You people and your cute little terms, you like to throw them around to make everybody squirm. Upper class, middle class, lower class, sassafras. Everybody these days thinks that they're a badass. How am I supposed to live in a world with no Madeline Kahn? My favorite girl is gone. Bonnie Dunes is now an AutoZone. 31 is trash. Now I just wanna be left alone. And global warming is ruining my fair complexion, augmenting all my imperfections. And Brazil does not need more encouragement. Troglodytes to leave their homes with guns and knives in search of quality refreshments and some homicide. I'm so sick of hearing people talking about the sun. They sound like a bunch of Aztec Indians, and all they do is hang out, clogging up the streets, congratulating each other on their pedicured feet. Sure, I like to see the fellas skateboard in their vans, stripped down to their shorts so they can work on their tans. I know I shouldn't care cause I'm a taken man, but I guess you can look. Nobody said that you can't. Augmenting all my imperfections, and Brazil does not need more encouragement. Global warming encourages slack-jawed troglodytes to leave their homes with guns and knives in search of quality refreshments and some homicide. All got are first world problems. I guess I better get some of the third world kind.
.3 The Current from Minnesota Public Radio. I am Mac Wilson, and I am joined in the Current studios by John Grant. Hello, John.
Hello, Mac.
Welcome back to town. Would you like to introduce the folks whom you are playing with today?
I sure would. I do have on keyboards Mr. Chris Pemberton, hailing from Coventry, England, and on guitar I have Mr. Peter Hallgrímsson from Reykjavik, Iceland, where I currently reside.
Reykjavik, Iceland.
Yes.
I love the word Reykjavik, or
yes.
name,
yeah.
rather.
It means Smoky Bay.
We could talk about names all day. I feel like we could get into it. Just before we went on the air, we were talking about the name for our engineer, Corey Schreppel, and you instantly came up with it. And I feel like, I'm a Wilson and you're Grant, and I don't really know the etymology behind either of those, but I'm sure we could get into it.
Yeah, Grant means something like plagued by paranoia, I think.
is the root of that. Plagued by paranoia and self-doubt. Something like that. I can't remember what my grandmother told me.
So, sort of on that note, the name of your new record is Gray Tickles and Black Pressure, and both of those phrases are derived from other languages. So let's start with Gray Tickles. What's the root of the phrase Gray Tickles?
Well, that comes from Icelandic, the Icelandic phrase, which is Grái fiðringurinn, which means, basically, it translates to directly Gray Tickles, and that's the phrase for midlife crisis in Icelandic. And then Black Pressure is a direct translation from the Turkish, and that means nightmare, actually. So midlife crisis, nightmare. And that's sort of a description of my entire existence so far. Not just, getting towards the 50s, but having left my mother's uterus, going out into the world. That's sort of been the feeling. It's sort of a joke,
Gray Tickles, it seems gentler to me than midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I feel like that could really catch on. It's
Exactly.
nicer.
Exactly. That's what I said when I first heard it. I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to have. I'm not going to have this. I'm going to have that.
So that song that you just performed, it's called Global Warming, and I'm kind of curious how the issue of global warming, it's well chronicled how global warming is handled in America. How is it handled in Iceland? Is it much different in good ways or bad ways?
Well, it's funny because, and you might want to look over at Peter while I'm saying this, because maybe he can corroborate or not this information, but the Icelanders are very similar. They're the most similar of all the Scandinavians to Americans, very much so. And they sort of treat their environment the same way. They sort of, global warming is sort of an example, the song, about how we as Americans deal with it. And it's, as you can hear, the song is not about global warming at all. It's about how it's affecting me and making me and inconveniencing me. And so, the song is about total self-absorption. It has nothing to do with global warming. It's just that it's too warm for me, and I don't like the fact that my autumn time is getting encroached upon by it, and it's just how it's affecting me. I don't really care about the environment, and I feel like that's a good example of how America deals with global warming.
It's just a wonderful way of extrapolating it. That's pretty much exactly what I had in mind. So that's
cool.
It's cool.
Very cool.
So the second part of the album title is Black Pressure, which is sort of a translation from nightmare, but at the same time, recording this record was a bit of a happier experience for you,
yes.
You've said. So how did that translate? How is it nightmare in the title and yet a happier time overall?
Well, I'm a huge fan of horror movies as well, so I always want the nightmare to be part of my experience, and it has always been, so why not just, be friends with it? But I did it with John Congleton, the album in Dallas, and I will say, I've always been somebody that deals with depression as a phenomenon in my life. So, at this point in my life, it's basically just about recognizing it when it rears its ugly head, and then implementing the tools that I have to limit my downtime from that. And the winter in Iceland is particularly difficult, especially this year. It was super nasty, and so the darkness comes. It can get pretty, if you don't pay attention and take your vitamin D supplements and really pay attention to what's going on with you, it can get pretty dark. And I was concentrating on writing this album, which has a lot of heavy, subject matter on it. So it got pretty dark there. So when it was time to go to Dallas into the light, it's a place that I never thought I would end up, But because of Midlake, I've ended up doing 2 of my 3 albums there, and it was a fantastic experience. It was dark because of the album itself, the subject matter, so mentally, but it was also a time of great levity and lightheartedness.
We are in the Current Studios with John Grant, performing at the Cedar Cultural Center tonight, along with Bright Light, Bright Light. How about we get another song?
Certainly.
You do this, you'll get that. I want what I was promised, I'm a bit impatient. And what is it exactly that you think that you deserve? No more, no less. Is that ridiculous? 'Cause what we got down here is oceans of longing and guessing games and no guarantees. And you work so hard to be in control, and now you're laughing at yourself 'cause you can't let it go. All we're doing is learning how to die. Do you really think nobody sees the tears behind your smile? Why do you care what anybody thinks at all? It's all going to the same thing in the end. 'Cause what we got down here is oceans of longing and guessing games and no guarantees. And you work so hard to be in control, and now you're laughing at yourself 'cause you can't let it go. What we got down here is oceans of longing and guessing games and no guarantees. And you work so hard to be in control, now you're laughing at yourself 'cause you can't let it go.
John Grant in the studios of 89.3 The Current. That is a song called Down Here from the new record Grey Tickles, Black Pressure. John Grant performing at the Cedar Cultural Center tonight. I want to give a congrats on debuting at number 5 on the UK charts. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much.
You posted out an article from your Twitter a couple of days ago, and it was talking about your battle with Faithless for the number 1 spot. And it was like... John Grant is only 1,200 copies behind Faithless for the number 1 spot, and I thought it was kind of crazy how they track it down to the copy over there. But then it kind of makes sense now. Like when you go on Spotify and you can count the individual streams of songs or particular records, and I guess it kind of makes sense. But is that strange to sort of quantify it like that, to have it be a race?
Yeah, I don't want to know anything about all that. You know, I sort of ignore it because I don't really even know what it means these days, because there's so many angles and perspectives that you can have about where that information is coming from and what it actually means. And, you know, all I want to know is, when can I have my house on Lake Superior, you know? And that ain't going to be for a while.
So is that a real goal that you have, to have a house on Lake Superior?
You know, I'm a Michigan boy, and I love the Midwest. I love, Minnesota, for example, and these places where the weather is more extreme in the winter, where it gets really cold and you have these amazing icicles, and where you have a really beautiful autumn with the trees changing and everything. So I do have this I have this notion that I'd like to have a house. I'd like to build a house for my fella and just build, him this beautiful place with lots of blankets and books and nice things around to feel comfortable in after coming home from being on the road, and take long walks in the woods when the leaves are changing and everything. I just think that's sort of my idea of heaven on earth.
Well, whether or not you want to be responsible for building the house, I have an uncle who actually builds houses up in the UP of Michigan. So if you're ever in need, if you're ever in need of a carpenter and or architect, you let me know.
Oh, beautiful. That's good to know.
Yeah. Last year, you contributed a track to the reissue of Elton John's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and you performed Sweet Painted Lady.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
Well, he and I had become acquainted shortly before then, and so he asked me to do that, and I, of course, jumped at the chance to do it, and we were going to be. It worked out so that I was able to do it with the legendary Peter Asher of Peter and Gordon and Apple Records out in Malibu, and that was quite an experience in itself. So it was just a huge honor. It's very humbling, of course, to be asked to do something like that.
So did Elton pick out everybody who was on that bonus disc himself? Was that all hand-selected?
I believe so, yeah.
Because it's sort of an eclectic mix. It's you and Ed Sheeran and Miguel all together on one disc.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't have been there if he hadn't done it, if he hadn't picked us out.
Did you get to pick the song, or did he say, hey, I want you to, take on Sweet Painted Lady?
Yeah, that's how it was. The latter. He chose the song that he wanted me to do.
Speaking sort of collaborations, the track that we've been playing on The Current is Disappointing. And how did you meet up? Does your relationship with Tracy Thorn, does that go back a ways, or is this a fairly new working relationship?
Well, my relationship with her goes back a very long way, because I started listening to her probably around 85 or 86 when I discovered Anytown, which is still my favorite Everything But the Girl song. And I've been listening to her for the majority of my existence. But we actually met after one of my gigs in London recently, last year to be exact, about a year ago. And we had a nice chat there afterwards, and we exchanged emails, and we've kept in touch. And she's one of my favorites. So that's another. These are all very humbling experiences to meet up with these people, and then to ask her to work with me and for her to apply or to reply with an affirmative, it's pretty crazy.
We are in the Current studios with John Grant performing at the Cedar Cultural Center tonight. I want to give a thanks to the Charles H. Clay Charitable Trust for its support of the Current's in-studio sessions. Thanks to producer Lindsay Kimball, and thanks to engineer Corey Schreppel with Dan Mariska, assistant engineer, and thanks to John Grant and his band for coming into the Current studios today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us, Mike.
And you're going to play one more of the title track from the new record.
Yes, we are.
I did not think I was the one being addressed in hemorrhoid commercials on the TV set. I often stand and stare at nothing in the grocery store because I do not know what to buy to eat anymore. And parapraxis is the order of the day. I'd never heard that word until tonight, I have to say. And I'm supposed to believe that there's some guy who'll take the pain away. And there are children who have cancer, and so all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. So all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. I've got gray tickles and black pressure, and I'd rather lose my arm inside of a corn thresher, just like Uncle Paul, just like Uncle Paul. looks remotely cool or is older than 2 weeks. You must be kidding me, except I do know better than to ask. I can't believe I missed New York during the 70s. I could have gotten a head start in the world of disease. I'm sure that I would have contracted every single solitary thing. There are children who have cancer, and so all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. So all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. They say let go, let go, let go. You must learn to let go. If I hear that phrase again, this baby's gonna blow into a million itsy bitsy tiny pieces, don't you know? Just like my favorite scene in Scanners. Apparently there was an outcry of some sort today, which no one heard incidentally. And by the way, I have not had the strength to leave my place in days or weeks. And I'll never understand what's happening in the Middle East. And there are children who have cancer, and so all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. So all bets are off, 'cause I can't compete with that. I've got great tickles and black pressure. I'd rather lose my arm inside of a corn thresher, just like Uncle Paul, just like Uncle Paul. I've got great tickles and black pressure. I'd rather lose my arm inside of a corn thresher, just like Uncle Paul, just like Uncle Paul.